Welcome to Building the $1 Billion Business, the podcast where we dive deep into the strategies, insights, and stories behind the world's most successful financial advisors and introduce content and actionable ideas to fuel your growth. Together, we'll unlock the methods, tactics, and mindset shifts that set the top 1% apart from the rest. I'm Ray Sclafani, and I'll be your host. Welcome back. So today's episode, we're going to tackle one specific question. Hang with me for a moment because the underlying purpose of today's episode is right behind this question. What responsibilities still flow through you that no longer should? Most founders do not have a succession problem. They have a control problem. And not control in the negative sense. That's not what I'm talking about. Control in the structural sense. Too many decisions still flow through one person. Too many client relationships still depend on one voice. Too much authority sits in one seat. All of that works well until it doesn't. Because at some point, growth will expose it. Complexity exposes it. And eventually your own capacity constraints will expose it. So the real question is not who will take over someday. The real question is much more immediate. What is still flowing through you today that no longer should? This is where the conversation begins. Not with exit planning, not with timelines, not with titles, but how trust actually moves inside your firm. These internal transfers of trust is what today's episode is all about. This is the place where internal transfer of trust planning has got to begin. Not with exit planning, but an honest appraisal of how authority and responsibility are distributed inside your firm. For many founders, succession is a loaded word, conjuring up feelings of decline rather than progress, and images of being forced out to pasture. As a result, the concept tends to, in turn, to heighten anxiety among clients and even team members. Not surprisingly, conversations around this topic are all too often put off until far too late in the game. The true issue, however, lies in the frame of the word succession more so than the actual word itself. If you merely reframe this word succession into something far more powerful, which is ensuring continuity, well, then suddenly everything shifts. After all, continuity is stewardship. Building an enduring firm is noble work and requires intense and intentional focus, actionable ideas, and when done well, it signals confidence, not retreat. Let me give you a quick definition. Internal transfers of trust describe the deliberate and visible movement of leadership responsibility from founders, controlling owners, and senior advisors to the next generation. This includes authority, decision-making, client leadership, strategic ownership, and cultural stewardship. I don't want you to think of it as delegation. That's not the right word. Think of this as intentional leadership development. And remember, until this shift occurs internally, all efforts at conducting external transfers of trust with clients will remain incomplete. Founders often resist letting go, not because they distrust or lack confidence in their team, but because their professional value, their identity, has long been defined by being needed. This is where the concept of strength to strength can be instructive. In his incredibly thoughtful book, From Strength to Strength, Harvard professor Arthur Brooks describes the evolution from success driven by execution to success driven by wisdom and judgment. Leaders struggle when they cling to roles that no longer require their highest value. Internal transfers of trust allow founders to evolve rather than diminish. From operator to steward, from problem solver to context setter, from CEO to chairman of the board. First and foremost, firm leaders must understand that trust does not transfer well under pressure. When responsibility shifts abruptly, clients sense it, they sense instability, team members even question their own readiness. So orderly transfers work far differently. Responsibility moves before titles change. Authority is granted before it is tested. And confidence builds through repetition. That's why the beginning of the year and every quarter throughout the year is the optimal point in time to design this transfer intentionally. Every 90 days, you and your team should be sitting down and thinking about this behavior-driven transition, making it more visible through your leader's behavior, through your behavior and their behavior. Allow the next generation leaders to drive client conversations, decisions they make being supported rather than quietly overridden. Allow their authority to be reinforced publicly, even when the outcomes may be imperfect. After all, you've not been perfect along this journey. Lots of scar tissue to prove that. Trust moves internally the same way it moves externally through exposure, experience, and regular reinforcement. Think of it this way. You wouldn't put a next generation advisor to take over a bunch of client relationships without knowing they were capable. They had the exposure and the experience. They got feedback on a regular basis, both from the client perhaps and you and your leaders. So think about the internal transfers of trust the same way. When founders visibly trust their next generation, even the clients feel more confident rather than concerned, and teams see a future and a firm that's worth committing to. Continuity is not a sign that you as a founder are exiting. Rather, it's a signal that the firm is strong, sustainable, and enduring. So here's an actionable idea. Right now, take a few minutes to think about your day-to-day responsibilities. List the top 10 recurring decisions that fall onto your plate. Identify 2 to 3 of those you're going to intentionally commit to transferring to others this year. Then define what evidence you will draw on to tell you that the trust you're placing in others is working. Letting go when done well is not loss, it's leadership in its absolutely purest form. Always keep in mind that leaders are not anointed, they're developed through exposure, responsibility, and trust transfers. With each episode, we include a few coaching questions to reflect as you think about what you've learned in today's episode. So there are 5 questions. They're quick. Let me run through these. First, which decisions still come to you by default rather than by design? What responsibilities could be transferred this year with the right trust in place? 3, where are you holding on because it feels familiar rather than necessary? Number 4, how visible is leadership authority beyond you to not only clients, but specifically for this episode, team members? Number 5, what would continuity look like if it were fully operationalized? Well, thanks for tuning in, and that's a wrap. Until next time, this is Ray Sclafani. Keep building, growing, and striving for greatness. Together, we'll redefine what's possible in the world of wealth management. Be sure to check back for our latest episode and article.